Okay. Dave, how do you want to handle it? You want me to give you, you can take over this ownership of this.
Okay, that sounds good. I will do that. I can share my screen, I guess.
Yes, you can.
All right. We will get started. Well, actually, before I share my screen, let me just say hi to everyone. I think I've met a few of you over at the Monroe Library. I've been giving some talks there for going on 5 months. September is the fifth month and the last month of the series that I've been giving. So it's been a lot of fun over there, and I wanted to thank you for the invitation, and Diane and Sandra for the emails and the communication and getting everything set up. So thank you, everyone. And it looks like you have a nice crowd and a nice facility there. You've got a nice room for meeting. So thank you all for coming out. I will share my screen. Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah, very good.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk about smartphone photography tonight, and I'm going to tell you right up front, I've only ever used an iPhone. I've never used an Android phone. My understanding is they're pretty darn similar at this point, and whatever the iPhone can do, Android phone can do at least that and probably more. So my phone is a iPhone 11, so not a new one. So every photo that I show you tonight, I've made on my iPhone 11 or even possibly a previous iPhone. So nothing fancy here in terms of my photos with my iPhone. So first, I wanted to just give you just a really quick introduction to me. So I've loved photography since I was a kid, and really my love of nature is what inspired my interest in photography. You know, being in nature and wanting to capture what I saw, hiking, camping, all that sort of stuff. So I started photography when I was a kid. It's been a hobby all my life. I think when I was, oh, I don't even know, 12-ish, 10 or 12, my brothers and I had a dark room in our basement. I don't know what my parents were thinking. Well, they didn't really care what we did, I guess. But we had messing around with chemicals in the basement was no big deal. So we had a dark room and had fun with that. So photography's been a hobby of mine really since about that time, and it became my full-time career about 10 years ago. And I do a lot of teaching. Um, and I teach classes online. I teach in person, mostly in the Princeton area. I work one-on-one with photographers, and I love everything about photography, and I can talk about it forever. So I love the both the art, what I think of as the art and the craft of photography. The art, you know, more composition and that end of it, and the craft of creating photos and editing and printing, and I love to exhibit my work as well. And I'm also the president of the Princeton Photography Club, and which is free and open to anyone who wants to, you know, join a meeting or two. And we meet every Wednesday night. Most of our meetings are online. Once a month we meet in person. We for the first, I don't know, I think we tried about 7 or 8 hybrid sessions and then decided to pause on the hybrid sessions. That is zooming an in-person meeting. It became kind of challenging, and most people were staying home as if they could. So now we're doing one in-person meeting a month, and all the other meetings are online. And if you want to join one of those meetings by Zoom, you can just go onto our website, princetonphotoclub.org, and you can sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get a link every Wednesday to watch a Zoom meeting, participate in a Zoom meeting. So I'm not trying to steal members from your great photo club there. I'm just offering another outlet if you're interested. So that's me. And so what I'd like to talk about tonight is, first of all, different types of smartphone photos. So what I mean by that is all the different kinds of photos you can take with your smartphone. And again, I'm going to focus on my iPhone. But again, I'm pretty sure that the Android phones can do all the same. Talk a little bit about ensuring good image quality and focus, controlling exposure, blurring motion, blurring the background. I'm going to just briefly mention editing photos because I actually don't edit my photos at all, the photos that I take with my iPhone. I just treat my iPhone like an old film camera or something. I don't do any editing at all. But I do use some apps, what I think of as creative filter apps, and I'll talk about those. And those apps are available both on Android and iPhone. So I let the apps do the editing for me. I don't do any editing myself. So that's what we're going to talk about. Any questions or any topic that you want me to touch on that you don't see here? And from anyone in the room there or anybody else on the Zoom? No? Okay. Well, if anything comes up, feel free to, I'm not sure how you're going to handle questions in the room there, Sandra, but if questions come up, just let me know. I'm happy to take questions as we go. You don't have to wait till the end. So feel free to just, wave or whatever you need to do to get my attention. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is the different types of photos that you can make. So on my iPhone, I can take a regular old photo. I can take a panoramic photo. I can take a time-lapse photo, what Apple calls a live photo. And a live photo is simply a really short video. And so a live photo is a 3-second video, and it's got, I don't know how many frames, a whole bunch of frames. And that's what a live photo is. And you can do some fun things with live photos. So I want to talk about that. Portrait photos, or the portrait mode, which allows you to use multiple, use the two lenses simultaneously. And so you can blur the background with the portrait mode. And then there's video, of course, and there's slow motion video. So I would love to know who uses any of these other than, well, who uses what in the room? I'm just curious if folks have any particular mode they love to use, or they've never used, or they wonder what it is. I'm just curious, what your experience is.
I use Panorama a lot.
Panorama, uh-huh.
Yeah, I do regular photos. I do panoramic. I love to do scenery, and I do videos. Mostly of my 2 grandchildren, and I haven't done time lapse. I haven't known how to do that. So.
Okay.
Okay, well, I've done regular, of course, video, and I've done panoramic.
Okay.
I do panoramic, especially in Colorado, because you get really great vistas.
Mm-hmm.
Regular and portrait.
Okay.
Excuse me, I just looked on my phone, where is the portrait photo? I have an i13.
So I'll show you on the phone a little bit later. I'm going to plug my phone in, but basically on when you go on, open up your camera app, the different modes are at the bottom, just above the shutter button.
Yes, exactly, but I don't, oh, never mind. Yes, I found it.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we'll talk. I'll show you examples of each of these and sort of what I think what I use them for. Okay. And I will say right up front, I am not a heavy iPhone user, iPhone photo maker. I use it. I think it's a great tool. It's always with you. And so there are many, many times when there are photos that I get with my iPhone that I didn't have my regular camera with. So I think of and I apologize for continuing to say iPhone, but smartphone in general. But I know I'm gonna say iPhone a lot. But I think of it is a real camera. I think of it as these are tools. So I think of my regular camera as a fork and my iPhone as a spoon, and I can eat with both of them. I can take pictures with both of them, but they're completely different tools, and I use them in completely different ways. I would never take a photo. I would never try and substitute an iPhone photo for a photo that I really wanted to make with my regular camera. So I think of them as two completely different tools with completely different uses, but both really valuable. So let's talk about the different kinds of photos. So regular old photo. So here's a regular old photo. And again, I had my iPhone with me so I could capture this butterfly. I didn't have my regular camera with me, right? So I'm really happy that I got this photo. And again, I don't do any editing. So what you're seeing is just a straight out of the iPhone. So this sort of straight photo of a butterfly. Here's a photo I took on the coast of Oregon. So this is overlooking Cannon Beach, which is a famous beach sort of right down here with this big haystack rock here for maybe some of you have been out there. So just a regular photo taken with the regular 1x mode. Nothing special here. Here's a photo that I took one winter in Yellowstone. Everything was closed, but I got in there, and it was just struck me as a nice scene. So I had my iPhone with me. I didn't have my regular camera at this moment, and so I grabbed this shot. Here's back to Cannon Beach. So just a nice walk on the beach at sunset, and there's a photo afterward. And here's a panorama of the same Cannon Beach and Haystack Rock. And you might be able to tell, even with zoom, there's a pretty big quality difference in the photo between the regular photo and the panorama. And that is a real difference in my experience. So the panorama photos are not, at least on my iPhone, again, which is an 11, maybe it's different now, but the panorama photos, I love to take them, but the quality of the images is not as good as a regular photo on the iPhone. So just something to keep in mind. So when they're doing the panorama and stitching it together, they actually use a much lower resolution photo, and then stitch a bunch of them together. But the dynamic range isn't as good. The colors aren't as good and things like that. And with my phone. Yeah.
Question. You're talking about the quality of the photos. Do you make prints from these photos?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I what?
Do you
Yes.
make prints from these photos that you take on your phone?
The only prints I ever make from phone photos are friends and family, snapshots of people that.
So you're saying you don't think the quality is good enough?
No, I don't want to say that. I mean, everyone's got a different bar, I guess I'd say, for what quality is. So I mean, for me, I mean, the quality of the images isn't, you know, to the same standard as what, you know, what my regular camera would do. So, so I wouldn't spend time printing it, but for little 5x7s, you know, I have a big family wall upstairs of photos of all extended family and friends, you know, 50 photos on the wall, 5x7s. A lot of those are iPhone photos. So it's great for that sort of thing.
Dave, I know you said you don't edit, but if you were to use something like Lightroom app or Photoshop app, I know you do a whole lot more now with masking and improving, reducing noise. That would help the quality of the resolution, wouldn't it? I mean, that's what I've done. I mean, I've changed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't really want to get into a big thing about the quality of the photos. I mean, to me, as I said, it's a different tool. I mean, for me, I wouldn't put a iPhone photo on my website. I wouldn't print it. I wouldn't put it in an exhibit. I wouldn't try and sell an iPhone photo or anything like that. So for me, it's not, it's the quality isn't there. I mean, you can't compare the lenses on an iPhone with, you know, a $2,000 professional lens. You know, it's just not, you can't compare them. So I don't try and compare them, right? I just think of them as two different things, and I'm really happy with that. And I don't try and make something out of iPhone photos that, you know, that they aren't. I just appreciate them for what they are. And so that's why I don't even try to do any editing, because it's not kind of not worth my time to do that. But I don't want to dissuade, you know, that's me. And that's not, you know, I'm not normal, right? So, you know, I wouldn't want to dissuade anybody from doing whatever they want to do. I mean, I think photography is such a great hobby. Whatever you want to do, whatever makes you happy, you should do. It's basically my rule of thumb for photography. So I really love to play around with the apps, and a couple of apps in particular that take really cool looking, very artsy kind of looking photos without having to do any editing. And I really appreciate that. So I just, you know, that's how I use my iPhone. That's all I can say. That's how I use mine. But that's not, I'm not preaching that you should do what I do. I'm just telling you what I do. That's all. So, and I love being able to do things like these panoramas. It's fantastic. I know a lot of you do that, and it's just great. I mean, it's amazing. So the other thing that's fun is, so here's a time lapse. So it does time lapse automatically. All you have to do is press the button, and it will take a whole bunch of photos together and create this sort of time lapse. That's a really fun thing to be able to do. Here's a video I took in my backyard. I had a bear walk. I'm pointing out my window, right out my window last year. I never would have gotten this shot. I'm in Princeton, downtown Princeton. That was a bear in downtown Princeton last August. I wouldn't have gotten that with my camera, regular camera, but I got it with my iPhone. So I was really happy about that. So that's video. And here is slow motion video. Let me actually share a different screen here. Stop share my this, and here's so there's slow motion video. That's fun too. I don't know if anybody's tried that. The slow-mo setting, kind of cool. So these are all different things that you can do with the iPhone. Really simply and easily, and without any need to, as I said, nothing I'm showing you has any editing. So what you do want to do though, and I assume again that the Android phone has a similar kind of setup. You do want to make sure you're capturing a high quality image, and there are kind of two important aspects to that. The first is deciding what file format you're going to use. So I don't have it on my phone because it's too old, but on the newer, I think since iPhone 12, the one after mine's 11, since iPhone 12 Pro and all Pro models after that, you can capture raw files. And if you do want to edit your photos, I highly recommend capturing raw files. They have a lot more data, and so any editing that you do will look way better with a raw file than it will if you capture a JPEG. And Apple doesn't call JPEGs anymore. They call them HEIF, which just stands for high efficiency image file format. And so if you're using an iPhone and you have something 12 Pro or newer, you will have to choose what kind of file format you capture or you use. So high efficiency is this one. High efficiency is just a JPEG. It's just Apple's proprietary JPEG. And it's got some benefits of beyond normal JPEG, which are cool. And then you can also capture in Apple what they call Pro RAW, which is their version of RAW. And on some phones, you can actually choose the resolution or how many pixels, a megapixel image you're capturing. So there are some, this is I think I'm not sure when they introduced the 48 megapixel, but you can't always take 48 megapixel photos, even with the new well, I shouldn't say that because they announced a new one today, so I don't know anything about that. But before that, you could only use the 48 megapixel file format when you're using the main camera at 1x. You couldn't use it for these other modes. It would capture a normal 12 megapixel raw file, which is still a lot. So the bottom line is, if you want to edit your photos, I recommend RAW. If you don't want to edit, just use the HEIF format. The other important thing is that you always want to use one of the optical lenses at least on the iPhone. So on my camera, I have two lenses. It's an old one and it's not a Pro. I just have the two lenses. And so I have the 0.5x and the 1x, and that's all I have. The Pro had 3 lenses and it had a 2x. So you always want to use one of those optical lenses to take your picture, and then if you need to crop it later, zoom in later, you can do that in editing, but don't do that with don't zoom in electronically on your camera, because all you're doing essentially is reducing the resolution of your photo, because it's throwing away it's not using the whole sensor, it's just throwing away the data. So what you want to do is always use one of the optical lenses, and you'll have the best quality photo, and then edit, the crop in when you edit after you take the photo. So the optical lenses, the 0.5x is about a 13 millimeter focal length. So that's a really wide angle lens. The 1x is like a 24 millimeter focal length. That's still a wide angle lens. And the 2X is about 48 millimeter focal length, which is a normal, very, very close to a normal lens. So the 2X is a really, I don't have a 2X on my camera, on my phone. But that would be, if I did, I would probably use that quite a lot. That's probably the one I would use the most, because that's a really nice focal length. But no matter which one you choose of the three, if you have a Pro, iPhone Pro, you always want to use one of these settings, and they're the standard settings. You'll see them when you are in the photo mode. And then you crop later if you want to zoom in, but don't zoom in on your camera. All you're doing is decreasing the quality of your photo.
Dave, I have the 14. I don't see where you can choose the always use an optical lens.
You have a Pro? He's got a
Oh, the
Pro.
Pro. Oh,
Yeah, so on mine, I can show you. Let's see, I'll have to switch over. Stop share my phone. Okay, see right here. All I can do is 0.5
I have that.
or 1.
Oh.
The Pro models have 3 lenses. So these are these refer to the optical lenses that are on the camera. There's a wide angle lens and what they call a 1X lens, which is still a pretty wide angle
Yeah, I
lens.
do have it. I have it 0.5, 1X, and 3. Yeah,
And 3X. Yeah, so the newer ones, so you have a 14?
yeah, I
So
have
they
it.
so they up from 2X to 3X, I guess, with the last iteration of iPhones. So with 3X, and that's actually my next slide here.
Question? Sorry.
So with 3X, it's actually about a 70. Well, it's like 24 plus.
Well,
Yeah,
the
it's like
whole camera is 50 millimeters, so if you wanted a normal, you'd use 48.
yeah. So 2X is
A wide angle lens to stretch it out.
yeah. So I think I'm not positive, but I think they on the 14. I think they did away with the 2X and they have a 3X. So you might have 0.5, 1, and 3X. Is that correct, Sandra, on your phone?
Yeah, it says 0.5, 1, and 5. Yeah.
And 3. Yeah. So the 3X is like 70 to 75 millimeter focal length. So that's a little bit more zoom. So basically, just pick the one that works for your photo, but make sure you use one of those. Don't like click on one and then pinch and expand. All you're doing is decreasing the quality of your photo when you do that. So yeah, so here's like an equivalent 0.5, 1X, and 2X. This gives you an idea. And today, it's funny that we have this today, but today was the iPhone event. They introduced iPhone 15, and they're now going to have 0.5, 1, and 5X on some models. So that's zooming into 120 millimeters. So, and they're also going to let you choose between 3 different focal lengths for what your 1X is. So this is, getting very technical here, but the bottom line is just pick the one that works for your photo and then take the photo. And if you want to zoom, crop it later instead of zooming on your phone. Okay. So I'd like to talk, this is a really important sort of topic for your iPhone. So one of the things, when I first was taking pictures with my iPhone, I just, it was point and shoot, lift up the camera, point, click, and that's it. I didn't do anything else. Then I learned that you can actually control where you set the focus. what's going to be in focus. And that's super important because depending on how far away from your subject you are, some things might be in focus and other things might be a little bit out of focus. So the way you set the focus, and probably a lot of you know how to do that, is you simply tap someplace on the screen. And when you tap on the screen, a yellow box is going to come up, and the yellow box is going to have a little sun next to it. But that's when you do that, that is going to lock the focus on that spot, on that area that you touched on. Now, if you start walking around and moving, the distance between you and your subject, you'll have to do that again because it's locked the focus at that distance. So you simply tap whatever you want to be in perfect focus. And I always recommend that you do that because there's always one spot in the photo, your photo, that needs to be in perfect focus, and you decide what that is. And so I never just take a picture anymore. I always tap on something, tap in some area, and make sure that that's in focus. So that's really important. And if you don't know about that, I suggest trying that out, play with that. Now, the other thing you can do is you can control the exposure in the same way. So you tap, and then, in fact, let me show you how to do this. So let me stop sharing here and share my iPhone again. Okay. So I set up a little sculpture next to my desk here so we could play with this. So I'm going to tap there. You can't see my finger tapping the screen, but I did tap, and and that's why you see the yellow box light up. But if you tap and hold, it's going to lock the focus. You see it says AEAF lock. That's automatic exposure, autofocus lock. It's locked the exposure and it's locked the focus. Now you can drag your finger up and down on the screen. Again, you can't. Let me see if I can do it this way. You can see my finger going up and down on the screen, and it's making the photo lighter and darker. So you can control the exposure of your photo really simply and really accurately by doing that. And so what I find is that I always think that the iPhone overexposes, for my taste, overexposes the photo almost always. So I almost always darken the exposure. So I always use this technique. I focus and then I drag usually down on this little slider here and darken the picture a little bit. So now you may decide, I think the iPhone always makes it too dark. I want it brighter. You could do that too. Whatever you want to do, it's an aesthetic choice. There's no right or wrong answer here. So these two things, these two techniques of controlling the focus and controlling the exposure completely changed my experience of the iPhone photos. Before doing that, I was really not using it much at all. After I learned to do that, it was really simple. But after I didn't know about it, somebody had to tell me about it. And once I learned to do that, then I had a lot more fun with my iPhone photos. So how many people there know about those two tricks? Is that something that people are doing? I see one hand, 2 hands, not many, right? So, so try it out. Try it out. For me, it made a big difference in my enjoyment of taking photos with my iPhone. So any questions about that? I'm going to just pause a minute because I can keep talking forever, and I need to remember to pause every now and then to ask if there are any questions. So
Questions online? Anybody have questions online? I guess we're all
You're
knowledgeable.
good?
Good to
Everybody? Okay. So that's the easy and I think the best method for controlling exposure. So you see here, I say controlling exposure method 1. There's actually another method that I think is really much more cumbersome, but I'm going to tell you anyway. But it takes a lot more work. So the second method is that when you're taking a photo, when you're in photo mode, you can click on this little caret thing here. And when you do, you're going to get a whole bunch of different menu items down below. One of those menu items has a plus and minus, and that is what's called exposure compensation. So you can make the photo lighter or darker by clicking on that and then dragging a slider left or right. I can show you how to do that too. I don't like that method. It's a lot of work. So I like just the simple method. So here's my Poseidon sculpture again. I'll click up here, and now all these menu items show up down here. I can click on that one, and then I can make it darker or lighter by using the exposure compensation slider. Okay, so that's, in my mind, that's way more complicated. That's a lot of clicks that you have to do to do the same thing. So I don't use that method at all, but I want to tell you how you can do it if you want to.
Question.
Also,
Question.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Talk louder. Where did you find out? So,
You'll have to repeat the question. I can't hear it at all.
You wanted to see where you found the exposure.
that arrow.
Right
that's
over
on-
there.
Yeah. So when you click, so you click on this button, this little caret, and when you do, you'll get down here. You'll get this whole menu of things that comes up, and the little circle with a plus and minus is the exposure compensation. So you click on that, and then you can drag the slider left and right.
Okay, so I found the arrow. So now what? You know what?
I can't tell if that was another question or.
She'll tell her afterwards.
I'll show her.
She'll show her.
I'll show her.
Okay. Yeah, so that's like 3 clicks to do the same thing that you're doing with 1 click the other method, right? It's a lot more complicated.
Quiet, please.
Is there another question?
No, we just getting quiet.
Okay.
Wait, there is one question. Go ahead.
Talk loud.
Are we going over the other?
She wanted to know about the other options there.
Okay. Let me switch the share again. I'll go back to this.
The lightning bulb, you have.
Yeah. So there are other things here. So let's click on the caret. So this is the lightning bolt is your flash. The moon, I think, is for nighttime photos. This little bullseye looking thing is live photos, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. The next one is it's the same. Actually, that's the same. Let's see. You can't see this, right? See, this is the same as this. So you can actually turn this on and off by just clicking up here. This is always there, even when that's closed. That little
Live.
the live photo thing is up here.
Does it-
The next one over is your aspect ratio. So that's the width over the height, or the height over the width in this case, depending on how you're holding the camera. So you can make that square, you can change the aspect ratio here, basically. The standard is 4:3 for the iPhone, unless you change it. So that's exposure compensation, which we've already talked about. The next one over is timer. It's a timer if you want to do it, take a photo 2 seconds later. Well, I'll just show you here. So 3 seconds or 10-second timer. So if you do a 3-second timer and do that, it counts down 3, 2, 1, and then takes the picture. Okay, that's what the timer is. So those are the things, at least on my phone, that you can do. The extra sort of bells and whistles. I never use those. To be honest, I know they're there, but I never touch them. So, okay, so the next thing, let's see, the next thing I want to talk about is blurring motion. So we're going to talk about blurring the background in a minute, but I want to talk about blurring motion because this is with the live mode. So it's a really clever trick that you can do. It's not, I don't think that this is not a really common thing that people know about, but I mentioned before that in live mode, or in this live photo mode, it's actually taking a 3-second video. And so you've got, like, I don't even know how many frames. I don't know that technical level of detail, but it must be, I don't know, it must be a lot, 30 frames or something, whatever it is. So what you can do is actually use that mode to blur motion, because you're taking those 30 photos, and everything that is still will remain still, but any motion that's in the photo, in the frame, you can click on a button, and I'll show you how to do it, and it will blur the motion. So it's really fun to do. So I was visiting my daughter up in Portland, Maine. She and I walked out to this lighthouse, and I took a live photo. So here's the regular photo I took, and then I took a live photo, and then I blurred the motion. So you see how the motion of the water is now blurred out, right? As if I was on a tripod doing a long exposure, right? It's really pretty fun little trick. And you also notice, and you can probably see up here, that any people that were moving just get blurred out too. So it's a great way, like if you're in, Grand Central Terminal or something, and you want to do a long exposure, and you can get all the people to blur, and the train station will stay nice and crisp, but the people on the floor will be all blurred out. It's pretty fun. So the way you can do that is, I'll show you how to do that. The way you can do that is make sure you're in, okay. Oh yeah, I gotta share again. Sorry. You can't see that. Okay, you can see that. Okay, so now I can't see my whole screen here for a second. You see, I still have my timer on. So the first thing I want to do is turn the timer off. I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so when this little circle up here looks like a bullseye, when it looks like that, then live mode is on. So that means it's taking a video. If I click on it, it's going to say live mode, live is off. It has an X, a line through it. So I'm going to turn that on, and then I can just take a photo, any old photo, and then I can click on it, and this will now go into sort of the edit mode, but I'm not going to edit anything. I'm just going to do one click. I'm going to click up here on live, and you have loop, bounce, and long exposure. Now, there's no motion in this picture I just took, so it's not really going to blur anything. But all you have to do is click long. Oop, I can't click it there. So I click it on my phone. Click long exposure, and then it's going to blend all those, let's say, 30 images together. So anything that was in motion will then be blurred. Okay, it doesn't work with the photo I just took because everything was still. But if I was at the ocean like this, it would blur the motion of the water. If I was standing in front of a fountain, it would make the fountain silky smooth, the water in the fountain silky smooth, etc. So that's a really fun, or like this photo here. This is an iPhone photo using live photo and then selecting long exposure. So what's moving gets blurred, what's still is sharp. So it's a very, very cool little trick that you can do. It's not meant to do this, but it's a little trick that you can do with live photo and blending all those, let's say, 30 frames together into one image. Anybody ever tried that?
No, I haven't, but it's cool.
It's very cool.
I
It's
have,
very, so you can do a long exposure photo without doing a long exposure right on your iPhone. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Honestly, it's pretty amazing. So I'm sorry, I can't hear.
I'm not sure how to find that live. On the phone.
Yeah, live is this button up in the upper right corner. So as long as it doesn't have an X or a line through it, like you see the flash has a line through it here. As long as this doesn't have a line through it, you're taking a live photo. You might not know, but when you get it onto, if you ever bring it onto your computer, you'll also see that it actually is whatever it is, 30 frames or 20 frames or whatever it is.
Yeah, but when
And you can actually choose the frame you want if you want to do a still shot too and not blend them.
when I click the live, then it shuts off the floor. So
You're gonna have to repeat that. I can't. I
Because when-
can't only hear.
when she clicks on live, it shuts off RAW and goes to JPEG. That's a pretty common thing.
well, closes off floor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you click on live, then in fact I mentioned that up here. You cannot use RAW with live photos or portrait mode or shooting video. So when you turn on live, if you have your camera set to capture RAW, when you turn on live, it's going to automatically turn off RAW. And I think when you turn off live, RAW will come back on if you've got it set in your settings here. So the reason for that is these are really powerful computers in here, but think about this for a second. 48, let's say it's trying to blend 20 or 30 frames that are each 48 megapixel. That would take my desktop computer a while, never mind the iPhone. So that's why it turns off. It can only do that with JPEGs. It can't do that with RAW files. It's just too computation intensive for the phone. Did that answer the question? Okay, so where were we? Okay, we did this, we did that, we did that. So that's blurring motion. If you ever have motion, water, there's a, or you can do it with, automobiles, bicycles, kids running, whatever. If there's motion in your photo and you do a live photo and then do long exposure, that motion is going to get blurred. So you have to be careful of that, because if you're trying to do catch your grandchild running, you probably don't want live mode for that, right? You want to just do a regular photo. Otherwise, if you took that live mode and blended it together, they would be all blurred out. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is blurring the background. So this is a really popular thing to be able to do. Ever since the smartphones introduced multiple lenses, so because of the design of the lenses, they can't, and the iPhone camera in general, they can't achieve a shallow depth of field. And a shallow depth of field is when one part of their photo is in focus, but a different part, either closer or farther away, is out of focus. And that's a really useful technique, photographic technique, to bring the attention of the viewer to the thing that's in focus and not pay attention to anything that's blurred in the background. Now, iPhones and smartphones in general can't do that. They can't achieve shallow depth of field because of the design of the cameras and the lenses. So a couple years ago now, they introduced multiple lenses, and I believe the whole purpose of introducing multiple lenses was to take two different pictures and blend them together, because they realized that if they keep saying it's a pro camera, it's a pro camera, it's a pro camera, if you can't have shallow depth of field, it's a huge issue from a professional, from a pro camera perspective. Depth of field is a really important concept and tool in photography in general, and iPhones and all smartphones can't do that. So it's a huge limitation. So they introduced multiple lenses so they can take multiple photos simultaneously and blend them together. And so that's what portrait mode does. When you go into portrait mode, you're actually taking multiple photos using both lenses, and then it gives you the ability to blend those photos together. So there's a couple different methods to achieving a shallow or achieving a blurred background, but the most important one, and the thing that's certainly works probably the best and has the most buzz around it, is the portrait mode. So there are a couple of constraints. The subject has to be a certain distance. So the subject has to be between 2 and 8 feet. And the really cool thing is, because you're blending photos together after the fact, that you can actually change the strength of the background blur before you take the picture or after you take the picture, because they're two separate photos. So, and you're just blending them together. So this is a really popular tool and technique to use on your phone. So when you go into portrait mode, you make sure that the subject is between 2 to 8 feet. It's automatically going to look for a face because it's portrait mode. So it's going to find the face, put a box around the face, make sure the face is in focus. And then what you can do is actually click on either while you're taking the picture or after you've taken the picture. You can either edit it or do it beforehand. You can change what they show as an F number, which really doesn't, it's faking it, but that's the idea. You can change the depth of field. So here you can just change this, scroll with this slider from a a low f number at 1.4 to a high f number f16, and a low f number will blur the background, and a high f number will make everything sharp. She's sharp in focus and the background's in focus. And again, you can do this either before you take the picture or after. I always recommend just take the picture in portrait mode and figure out what you want later, because it's so much easier to do it that way. Don't worry about what your setting is. Just go into portrait mode, and after you've taken the picture, you go into the edit. You go into edit, and then you change the slider. Okay. So that works really well. It doesn't really look like a traditional shallow depth of field because there's not the sort of fall off of the focus, but it's a really good approximation of it. So has anybody tried using that? I know somebody said they had earlier portrait mode.
I'm gonna answer that. I have, but during the taking it, I just learned from you that you can do it when you post edit. Cool.
Yeah, you can do it in that. I think it's easier to do it afterward.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the photos are there, and all you're doing is telling the computer and your iPhone how to blend them. That's all you're doing.
Right.
So that's a really popular technique, and you can do it with flowers. You can do it with any, it doesn't have to be a face. It's going to look for a face because it's portrait mode, but you can do it with other subjects too. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. So another way to blur the background is if you get really, really super close to something, and then the background is further, much farther away, then that will, but you have to be inches and then have something, 100 yards away. So if the subject is inches and the background is 100 yards away, then you can blur the background. So it's not really a very practical technique for most pictures, but you can do it. You can do it. And so here's an example. I just took these picture of these flowers in living room. So this is just the regular picture in portrait mode. And here is blurring the background a little bit. And here's blurring the background a lot. So this is in portrait mode, no editing. It's just changing the F number in after I took the picture. This is one picture with 3 different versions of it, examples of it with blurring the background. Okay, so in this picture, I was really close to this flower. And so the background is a little bit blurred to begin with because I was so close, inches, right? It's not very blurred, and there's a lot of distracting stuff back here, but I blurred it a little, and then I blurred it even more. And now all the focus goes, all the attention goes to the flower because it's the only thing really in focus. Okay, so that's
Question.
Yep.
The scale for the blur. Can't find that's your f-stop. Can you show it? What are you talking about when you take the picture? Diane?
Yeah. Right. The F stop.
Are you in portrait mode?
Are you in?
I'm in portrait mode. I only net natural light, contour
No,
light.
did you hit the arrow on the top?
Yep.
And this should be an F. on the
Yeah.
top.
I'll show you. I'll share my screen again, or my.
You
You
just
found it.
it.
You found
Oh,
it.
you got it? Okay. 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 Let's go back to that. Okay. Yeah, you got to hit that caret again at the top, I think. Actually, no. In portrait mode, it just shows up in the where that circle, that target for live mode is. It shows up there. So again, I find it easier to not mess around with it when I'm taking the picture, and I just dial it into whatever I want after I take the picture. Okay. So the other thing that I discovered on my own, and I don't know if this is if I've never read about this, but I was messing around. I happened to take a picture of this wine bottle, which I do. Anybody else do that? You go out to dinner and you discover a wine, you say, "Ah, I got to remember that one."
Fine.
Of course, I would never remember that. So I take a picture of it, right? So half the photos in my collection of photos are wine bottles I want to remember, or things like that. So what I discovered was that I accidentally took a live photo of this wine bottle. And so here's the photo I took. That's what showed up on my phone, but it was in live photo mode. But what I discovered was when I went into I was looking for different live photos just to show you guys. And I found this one, and I went into what happens if I hit long exposure with this? Well, what happens is, because there's all this writing, it aligns, it can see it can distinguish the writing, and it aligns all the writing from the 20 or 30 frames it takes perfectly. And then it blurred the background beautifully. It's amazing. I mean, this is an amazing technique, but it only works with certain things that the computer in your iPhone will be able to, easily distinguish and align together.
Dave,
Yeah.
what happened to the water glass?
Oh, blurred out because, yeah. So, I was moving around. I think I was, sort of doing this while I was taking the photo, and it blurred out, disappeared.
It's blurred out. Look at the tablecloth.
Yeah, the tablecloth is blurred out too.
No, what I meant is you have where the glass is standing, there's two boxes before it to the bottle. And the picture on the right is only showing the two boxes. But
Oh, it could be that the glass is over. Yeah. So one thing that happens is I notice is that whenever you do long exposure, it crops the photo a little bit.
Okay.
So it could be that it cropped it out, but this looks like, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. I guess all we're seeing is this square here. You can see it's a little bit sort of discolored blue, right? And I guess the wine, I guess it just turns out that it cropped it and it took the
bottom also.
took the bottom out, took the glass out. Yeah, the bottom also, there's something here. I don't know what it is, but that's good. Oh yeah, and it cropped the bottom of the bottle. Yeah, and the top too. Well, all around. It took this out. So it did crop it a little bit. Anyway, I thought this was really cool that the basically the software in the iPhone is smart enough to align all the writing and use that as like what it's, as a keystone, and then it's blurring everything else. So even me, there's me taking the photo, and I'm kind of blurred out as well. And whatever's going on here is blurred out in the reflection. Anyway, it's a good bottle of wine as well. So that's another way to blur the background. And I think this looks, I like the way this looks in terms of the depth of field. It looks like a more natural depth of field than actually the portrait mode does to me. But anyway, so I told you I don't edit my photos, but if you do want to edit, you can. One of the nice things about Apple is how you edit on your phone is identical to how you edit with the Photos app on your computer. Everything's the same. It looks a little different, but all the sliders are the same. Everything's the same. So it's really nice. So if after you take the photo, your photos will show up in your Photos app, and then you can edit there to your heart's content. So I'm not going to get into that because it's, it's very particular to
Yeah,
the Mac, Apple. What's that? Is there a question? No? Okay. But I will tell you that just these really quick things here. So if after you've taken the picture, on your phone itself, you can adjust the light and color with this icon down here. So you can click on that and adjust things. You can apply filters, which is this icon here. You can crop and straighten with this icon down here. So if you want to do those things, you can do them right on your phone, and those icons are all the same icons that show up on your computer as well. So it looks different, a little bit different on the Mac, but the sliders all work exactly the same. So what I really love to do, I mentioned a couple of apps that I like to use, and the two apps that I use, I really only, they're at this point the only two apps I use. I mean, I've used Lightroom on and off, and Lightroom is a great app if you want to use it on the phone. It's free. I teach a lot of Lightroom, so I know how to use it, but I don't use it. So because I don't want to edit my photos. So what I like to do, I love to use this app. It's called PS Camera, Photoshop Camera. I think they've changed the name recently. I went to just double check for this class, and I think it might be called Portrait Camera, Photoshop Portrait Camera, or something like that. And I love the Tintype app. The Tintype app is a separate version of Hipstamatic, which maybe some of you have heard of. Hipstamatic to me it's cool, but it's so complicated. I mean, for me, I'm using the phone because I want it to be simple, and I want it to be handy, and I don't want to work with it. So I use these two, PS Camera and Tintype. PS Camera is free. Tintype, I think, was $1.99 or something like that. I believe Tintype may only be available for iPhone, but I'm not positive. I think it was at one point, but it may be on Android now as well, or it may be built into the Hipstamatic app on Android. So, so these have preset filters or styles. I think of them as, they call them filters, but I think of them as, styles or editing treatments. And so here's an example. So here's a photo I took, a full moon over a lake in Princeton. This is the Tintype app, and I'll show you some more Tintypes. And this is the is the PS Camera app. So you can do really cool, and these are just, click and you're done. There's no editing. You just pick the filter you want and you're done. So here's a portrait I took of a friend of mine with the Tintype app, and I love it, and she loved it. In fact, she asked for a print of it, so I did make a print of this. But it's just, for those of you who aren't familiar with Tintypes, it's a very old technology of making prints. It's from, I think, the turn of the 19th or turn of the 20th century, so 100 plus years ago. And this Tintype app does a great job replicating what Tintypes look like, with all the distress in the plate, the photographic plate. It's just really fun. and there's, again, zero editing. There are a couple things you can do in tintype, but most you can make it either the sepia color or black and white, and you can change the strength of the distress and things like that. But that's it. You don't have a lot of control over it, but it's super fun. I love the way this looks. Love it. So I showed you that lighthouse with one of the very first photos I showed tonight, that lighthouse up in Portland when I was with my daughter. So this is that same place. This is where I showed you the blurred motion in the water down here. This is that photo taken from the same spot with the tintype app. I just think it looks really cool. No editing. There it is, done. Love it. That's the way I like to use my iPhone. Here is a photo on the other side of this same lighthouse. So I just walked up the coast and looked back using the Photoshop camera app. Pretty fun. I don't like this as much as I like the tintype app, but you know, not everybody likes black and white or sepia colored things, and the color looks pretty cool. Here's another photo I took with the PS camera app. This is at Princeton University. I was just walking around one day and took this photo. Again, it's just a push of a button. There's no editing. This is just the way it came out. And you can take the picture and then you can change the style. So you can just flip through and find a style that you like. Also, that same day I was walking around, a different style in Photoshop camera app. Kind of fun. And this is the chapel at Princeton University, with also with a Photoshop camera app, giving it a Van Gogh look. So that's it. That's what I have. So a couple of techniques that are really hopefully useful for you in terms of controlling exposure and controlling focus, how to blur motion, both with the live feature, and how to blur the background, and then playing around with some apps. So I hope you enjoyed that, and happy to take any other questions you might have.
Dave, I just want to say, this is Sandra again. I found that very informative. I learned quite a few things. I do use my phone. I'm pretty good at it. I think, but there's always something to learn, and you captured those items. So I do appreciate that.
Great.
Your explanations were quite easy to follow. If anybody here needs some help out, I'm willing to come and sit with them for 2 minutes one day in the clubhouse. So thank you. Dave?
Yes.
I want to mention that it's two more classes at Biden. Oh, you did. Oh,
Yes, at the beginning. Yeah.
Could you repeat that?
She wanted you to say, she was say that you are teaching at the library. You have a couple more classes.
Yes, I am. In fact, I'm gonna essentially do a repeat of this on Thursday. I think on Thursday at 6 o'clock. So if anybody wants to come and hear it again in person, and it's always helpful, I think, to hear things a couple times. So
3 times is always good. Anybody have any further questions?
I have a quick question. I noticed
Diane.
some of my the different senses of different types of light.
could you repeat that? I can't hear anything other than from.
I sometimes when I'm editing, there's boxes that come around with different kinds of light
Oh, that she's talking about in the portrait mode. I think you're talking about in the portrait mode. I'm pretty sure she's talking about the portrait mode. When you go in the portrait mode, to take a photo,
Mm-hmm.
there. You go to take.
Oh, they're different. They're different
Yeah,
styles. Yeah, of
you
lighting.
have your natural light, you have
Yeah.
natural light, stage light.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about-
So that's like what you can do in like some of these other apps, like Photoshop camera app. You can change where the light, the I think in that portrait mode, you can do some pretty strong things. I don't honestly, I don't use that, but I know that you can like change the. Let's just see if I. Yeah, so you can make it. You can make it. The light appear like it's coming from different directions, and you can make it black and white, things like that. I don't find it that interesting, what you can do there. So I just leave it in natural light and take the picture and don't bother with it. Or if I want to do something like that, I just use the PS camera app, and there's a lot more you can do with that.
Anybody else? I think we have everything. Flo was asking a question. Flo, you have a question?
That PS camera app, you said it was free?
It's free, yeah.
And
It's free.
Yeah.
I think I looked for it earlier because I've had it for a while, and I looked for it a couple days ago in preparation for this. I think it may now be called Photoshop Portrait Camera. I don't think it's called PS Camera anymore. On my phone, it still says PS Camera, but I have a feeling that you might need to search
Portrait camera?
Portrait Camera. I think that's what it's called now. Yeah.
Okay, I'll look, thank you.
Anybody else online or here? I think we have everybody questioned out. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Thanks,
Thanks for your attention, and please let me know if you have any questions, and you're welcome to come to the library on Thursday.
Which date on Thursday?
This Thursday.
At the library?
Yes, yes.
At the library?
Yes, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Yes, 6 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you, Dave.
All right. Good night, everybody.